Hi, so I'm Denise from Smith Physical Therapy and Running Academy, and I'm super excited to do this video. I'm with Wil from the Running Depot in downtown Crystal Lake, which is our specialty shoe store here in the northwest suburbs. So thanks for joining me.
Oh, you're welcome. Let's talk about shoes.
Oh, we're total nerds when we're together. We're either talking about running technique or running shoes. So we thought we'd actually combine the two this time. I ask Wil all the time about what's inside of a shoe because I hear you guys ask me questions from a running technique standpoint, like why is one shoe better than the other? And I don't always know the answer, and so that was why I came to Wil to help me learn what the difference is.
Oh yeah, I've been playing with shoes for about 6 years now. So kind of seeing how they update, seeing how they change each year, as well as I was curious of what's inside them too. So.
And Wil is an ultra runner. You've pushed your feet in different shoes, felt what you like.
Yeah.
So you come from the background as an expert because you're trained in this, but also as a personal experience because you run long miles.
And luckily working at the running store, like every time we get a new shoe in, we try it on to make sure we see the changes, see how the customer might feel it with the shoes, to know how those little quirks of the shoes are. So I get to play with shoes all day, which is always fun.
It's always fun. I asked Wil, was like, what's on the inside of a shoe? And he was like, well, I don't know. And so Wil loves to dabble in construction projects and working with circular saws. So he cut one in half for us.
Only lost a little bit of blood.
Yeah, he totally did cut his finger. I feel horrible. We also took another shoe and cut it the other way. And so in a minute, we're going to talk about the different, how the materials are made, why certain cushioning is in other places and things like that. So you guys can actually understand when you go look at shoes, what some of the terms are and what you're looking for.
Yeah, we'll describe some of those technical terms that you might have heard of and don't really fully understand about the shoes. So
why don't we start with understanding the shoe?
Yes.
Because there's a lot of terms that are thrown out there, and it seems that there's new trends where they'll throw out a fancy term like carbon plate, and then people don't really know what that means or what it does. And the big reason too that I really wanted to do this video with you is that I think people feel very comfortable just going online, searching best shoes for overpronators, and they'll just pick something but not really have anybody that specializes in this, like look at their feet, ask them, you ask like 20 questions when someone's getting a shoe.
Oh yeah, we definitely go into the detail of the history. Pretty much most of our customers come in and like this, I saw this shoe got 4.5 stars, I kind of want to try this one on. So I happily go grab that shoe and then I look at their feet and bring out maybe 2 or 3 others that I think would be a little bit more in their realm. They try on the first one that they saw good reviews, and then they try on the other ones. They most of the time go with the other ones because of that structure that they need in the shoe.
So some terms that people hear, and maybe you could show us examples.
Definitely.
Okay, so there's 2 that I sometimes get confused on, is stack height versus heel drop.
Oh, of course. So we'll start with this ASICS guy on the stack height and heel drop. So first, the stack height is the amount of cushion that's plush under the heel and the amount of cushion that's all the way through the forefoot. So it's usually 20 millimeters, 30 millimeters, and then it changes for when it goes up to the forefoot. And that's the stack height versus the heel drop.
Different shoes, like what about a Hoka?
So the Hoka, it looks massive. And it's very deceiving because the stack height on the Hoka is much larger than the stack height on the ASICS, but the heel drop on the Hoka is much less.
So how's heel drop calculated? Because we'll usually hear it's like a 4 millimeter heel drop, or I think it ranges usually from a 0 to like a 12 millimeter.
Yes.
Is the highest?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's the difference of cushion from under your heel to the under your forefoot.
So the difference in the stack height?
Exactly.
I just learned something today. Okay.
So it's like, a couple pennies height of difference.
Okay.
Typically.
So then you have a 0 drop.
Correct.
Which is 0?
Massive drop difference, which for some people is great because we need that control, we need that support, depending on the foot needs. And then we have that nice middle round, and then a 0 drop.
Okay, so that's where there's no difference in the stack height between the front and the back.
Correct.
Okay, so we'll talk about why someone would want one more than the other in a minute, but okay. What about the upper mesh?
So yeah, every shoe brand does a little different type of mesh. They try to get it reinforced. They use different types of knits to it to give it structure, but they all kind of want to focus on a little stretch and breathability.
Okay.
So that way there's not too much moisture in the shoe.
All right, so that's why there's some that have like nothing there, and then some that have a couple, like it feels thicker.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, and the tongue?
So the tongue does one job. It protects the top of the foot, the bridge of the foot, from the laces kind of getting too much pressure on the bridge. So some tongues are extra padding, and some are super thin, lightweight, and kind of just taped to the foot.
So this is an on. Ons are like nothing.
Correct.
But something like a Brooks might have more padding in there.
Yeah.
Okay. What about the heel counter?
The heel counter. So sometimes we need a little bit of support on how we land, and that little bit of plastic or reinforcement around the heel kind of cups that and sucks that heel in so it doesn't rotate or slide around.
This Saucony, I mean, it is like,
Rigid.
I can't even move that, but maybe if I take like an Ultra or the On, I can like squeeze it and move it around.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then the mids, oh, sorry.
And that's just going back to like, that's kind of why we ask the 20 questions, because we want to see what you're doing with the shoe, if you're putting something in there because your doctor told you to, or you're training for certain events that need a little bit more flex or a little bit more support. So the 20 questions.
And there's a reason why you guys asked the 20 questions. Okay. And the midsole part.
Definitely. Oh, I think at this time it might be best to show. So this was a Saucony shoe that we cut in half long ways. So the EVA foam, that nice soft foam under your heel and forefoot, gives you that propulsion and cushion, protect you from the concrete. And then you have that little bit of extra tread that gives you the traction.
So on a traction shoe like this versus one like this.
Yeah, so if you guys can see, this one is a trail version, so it has a little bit more teeth to it. This would be great for mud or some slipperier surfaces. Versus the road version, it's meant for longevity on the road, so it doesn't get sandpapered smooth as easily. And then you can see that little padding through the tongue. We have that little nice thin breathable mesh here under the toe box. And then the sock liner that comes with the shoe. There's not much to it, there's not much cushion, they kind of flatten out within a week, but their job is to protect the shoe, your foot, from all those little rough edges from the bottom of the shoe. So there's some stitching, there's some little bit of plastic, a little bit of glue, so that just kind of protects the foot from getting those little irritants. And here's a cutaway showing the support and dual densities of the shoes. So we have that nice purple squishy cushion, but then there's a little bit of green. That's going to be under the arch. That's a little denser and a little higher cut, so that gives it that arch support. And that's going to be a long-term use for the shoe doesn't wear out and squish out after a month of wear. That denser material takes more of abuse and it'll last longer.
So if someone were saying they were an overpronator or an oversupinator, or someone would be like, well, I have a shoe for you that's for an overpronator, oversupinator. That's what that means, is that there's just a different type of support right here, which you can see in that color difference.
Correct, yeah. Each shoe kind of has that design to cater the foot's needs. Every foot's a little different. Every foot kind of reacts to pressure differently. So this guy is built to give you that control for that lateral movement.
I was just commenting on look how thick this tongue is. So if you're a runner who sometimes gets numbness through the top of your foot, that's why you want to look at your lacing strategy or the thickness of the tongue.
Yes. So we just mentioned about support frames. Sometimes shoes update their support style. Brooks now has what they call a guide rail system. So it's kind of like, I always classify as like bumper bowling. If you accidentally bowl a little too far to the left, it snaps you back to the center. If you bowl straight down the middle, you're not really affected too much. So they did the guide rail to get a wider range of support need to people out there.
So it's different than where it was here?
Yes, exactly. So this shoe, it's for a stronger pronator because of that dual density. It wears out aggressively. You might have a shoe that wedges and looks kind of off kilter.
When you were talking about the Paradigm,
yes, by Ultra.
So this is an aggressive. Why would this be more aggressive guide rail than that?
So if we can
like the
see where it sits under the arch, the height and thickness of that versus the Brooks, there's just a little bit, maybe an inch or so versus like the almost 2 inches of framed up guide rail that your heel will sit actually under that area.
Okay. The great thing about working with the Running Depot as a PT and a running technique specialist is a lot of time when Will is asking you his 20 questions and he's watching you walk, shoes on, shoes off, if he sees a lot of mobility that shouldn't be there, he'll usually say, I need you to go work with Denise for a couple sessions, because we want to find the reason why there's so much mobility, if there's too much or not enough, that make sure it's not coming from somewhere further up the chain. Shoes are expensive, and so they never want you to buy a shoe that doesn't fit you well. So fix your form, and then you get a shoe that's perfect for you, and it will really enhance your running.
Oh yes.
So, okay, and then the carbon plate, that's like the new fancy term that we keep hearing about.
Oh yeah, the carbon plate. There's a few brands that do it, Nike, Hoka, Saucony, I think Brooks has one. The carbon plate, what it does is it gives it a little bit of a snap through the forefoot. So that way you get a little more energy return through your gait cycle. So if you're running a half marathon, it's almost like running 11 miles versus 13 miles energy-wise. So they're just trying to give you a little bit more of an edge to the shoe. Support and things like that, it's not really doing anything to it. It's just more of a flex and spring action.
So I guess that's where running technique, if you don't really have good form, that extra technology isn't going to do anything for you.
Yeah, the extra edge of a unique shoe isn't going to change in the end too much. It's kind of just race day shoe.
Okay, but if your technique is sound and you're strong, it could give you that much more of a little edge.
Oh, definitely.
Okay,
yeah.
All right. And then toe box. This is always I think this is the most fascinating part of the shoe. Like, ask my clients. I love talking about toe boxes because I just think it's, finally we have shoe companies that are addressing, I have a really wide toe box, but I have a small ankle. So typical shoes were always a challenge for me. Wil was the one that was like, we need to get you in a wider toe box, because the first time I came in here, we had to almost go up a size to accommodate my toe box, but then I had too much wiggle room through my heel, and so that's when he was like, we just need to get you a wider toe box shoe, and so that was how we kind of got to where I am with my ultras. So.
Or I'm sure, like, you were like, a lot of our customers come in and like, oh, I need an extra wide shoe, or 2 sizes up because of their foot. They're used to just buying it off the shelf. They're not used to coming in and stepping on a Brannick or putting their foot in the machine that kind of shows us the size. And then as well, each brand runs a little different in their sizing. So that being said, like, you just need to kind of be measured.
Yeah, that's why you should work with a shoe fitting specialist. So let's just show everybody the difference in a toe box to help them understand.
We have a Saucony kind of Speed Demon that's a little bit on the narrow side because it's meant to be fit and agile. We have Asics, that's a medium fit. It's just a general mesh, stretches a little bit, but a little on the narrow side, not too boxy. Then we have Ultra. And Ultra, as Denise was saying, is just naturally wider in the toe box. It allows those toes to kind of flex out and react with the ground naturally versus being pinched under each other.
Which is sometimes based on your foot shape. Like, not everyone's foot is shaped like this, where you have longer toes at the front. Sometimes you have, like me, short, stubby feet, and so the toes all are almost the same height. Yes, we're boxier.
Boxy toes.
So that's nicer than stubby. Thank
Yes.
you. Thanks for making me feel better. Take me through the fitting process. Like, so I come in, I want a new pair of shoes. Does it start with you asking me some really important questions to get to know where I'm running, what I'm training for, any injuries, things like that?
Yes, of course. Well, we help customers out that are just using it for work, or getting into walk running, or even they're doing their second marathon. We have a whole range of clients that we work with. First, we kind of ask those 20 questions. What are you doing? Are you having any feet issues? Or are you seeing PT, or having kind of been working on your form? Just to kind of get a base for what their needs are.
Do you watch me walk then?
We do, yes. We watch the natural gait cycle of how they put pressure on their feet, where they're putting pressure on their feet, and how that ankle and mobility is forming. Sometimes we need a little bit more or less, and it just varies on customers.
Okay. And I know you guys have asked me to take a look at some of your clients to see if sometimes there's a hip issue or a knee issue or a low back issue, because that can affect further down the line. So I think when people are stable and strong, then finding that shoe that's right for them, it's much easier for you guys, because you can take away anything else that's contributing and just look at what they need then.
Yeah, starting out, the foot might need a certain type of shoe, and then halfway through their training cycle, the foot is stronger, a little bit more capable of going with a different type of shoe. They don't need as aggressive support, or they don't need that type of cushion anymore. So almost even through a year, the foot might change.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
I like that because it
And
shows
I've had-
that our exercises are working.
And I've had clients come from Denise saying like, oh, I started out with this really aggressive ASICs with that support, and then I want to try Saucony out, and I'm like, well, let's see, in the history that's what you're used to. Let's see what it looks like on you. Sure enough, their form's a little smoother. They can carry on that gait cycle safely and efficiently with a different shoe.
Well, so you might have them walk and see something. So you throw a couple pairs on them and let them try them on, make sure it's right for them.
Correct. Yeah. So it's a dual thing. We want to make sure the customer feels comfortable in the shoe, but as well as we're like eyeing the foot, seeing how that shoe's reacting with the foot, as seeing as well their gait. Sometimes it changes their gait completely, and it is not in a good way. So we see that they're stumbling around. And they're just not fitting the right way. So we kind of pull that one aside real quick and be like, I don't really recommend this one. So sometimes we just need to see it on their feet.
My big thing is like you want to think your shoe looks good. Like you don't want to buy an ugly shoe. So I mean, I do think how it looks is important. It doesn't make the only thing. But then the other thing is, are you comfortable? Right. It's not a grandma shoe. But is it comfortable?
Yeah.
Like that's important too in this.
That's true. Well, luckily brands have seen that coming. They're kind of making the shoes a little bit more streamlined look. They have that nice knit now and fun colors. So we're lucky nowadays that it's not just that white or black shoe.
Yeah. The one thing that I, as a running technique specialist, really focus on is people's perception of movement. So as a trail runner, you have to be very aware of what your foot is doing, what you're landing on, what you're feeling. And so Wil was telling me an interesting story about how the Hokas were developed.
Yes, so they were first kind of designed for the Alps downhill running, so that for some people aggressively land on their heel and need that heel protection. So they threw a whole bunch of cushion on that foot to give it that protection.
Well, and then from my standpoint, I'm always like, but now they can't feel what's happening at their foot because there's so much cushioning, and all that impact is still traveling up their leg, but that's a story for another day. But that feeling of having this much cushion, I think, can inhibit your perception. But that's why you need somebody like Wil and the combo of a running technique specialist too, to help you make sure that you're not hiding something, that the force isn't just getting displaced to like your knee or your hip. You can't really stop force, it just gets redirected. So it's important that they look at you to make sure that the reason you want this much cushioning is for whatever reason, and not just because you think you saw this online and thought it was the best thing for you.
And we're in no way means knocking a brand for certain things. Each shoe has their particular needs for certain feet. That's just going back to why you should come here, because we'll see those things. We get customers saying like, I have to have this brand, and I of course bring that brand out, and we also bring a couple others just to kind of play and see what others feel like.
And yes, every shoe has its place for everybody. And there are some new shoes that are, we're used to the ASICs and the Sauconys and the Brooks. But there's a couple that have been popping up that are these little niche groups. Yeah. So like the Ons.
Yeah.
So tell us the story on On.
Swiss engineered, so it's got that really technical, new engineered style cushion. They have that, you can see a little bubble sensation going on. So A, it's going to be a little lighter, that it's not just a straight foam. And B, that as the foot hits the pressure points, heel or forefoot, those bubbles spread and disperse the energy laterally versus back into the foot. And then kind of that wider frame as it disperses gives you inherently a little bit more support.
My only complaint about Ons is I don't like running with them in trails or around my yard. I either get rocks or, what did you say, acorns in there. And sometimes if I step in my dog's poop, it ends up in there. So,
hard to
so that would be my only complaint. If On could make some with like the holes plugged for us trail runners, that would be really great.
The little filters that are stuck in there.
Like a brush. And then Ultras, they kind of have found their special niche with people like me who have the wider toe box or like the zero drop. Okay, and they seem to have a variety too of like trail runs, and now they're moving into like everyday comfort shoes. So if somebody comes in and maybe they have been working with a running technique specialist and we're finding that they don't need something with a really high drop, but they want to move to something with a lower drop, I feel like there should be some concerns and some training that should happen with that.
Yeah, as you know, changing the shoe in any way, it does utilize certain muscles differently. So we want to gracefully transition to certain type of shoes. We can't just go from like a huge stack height, huge drop to something that's minimal and no drop. That's just going to affect the body a little too extreme. So we kind of want to start gradually
weaning down.
Exactly.
Okay. And we have some technique drills that we tend to put our runners through in preparation for that. A lot of understanding like springiness and making sure that they have that lightness in how their foot is making contact with the ground. So that's always a really good point. Are there other things that, like if somebody has a bunion, so you know, an extra bony growth on the inside of that big great toe, you know, or plantar fasciitis, those questions you want to know.
Oh, of course, because going back to the shoes, they have certain arches, certain shapes that just kind of fall into prey for those bunions or bone spurs or fascia issues that the clients are coming in for. And so we just kind of know to, you know, we're not going to pull a shoe that's not going to be effective for you. We're not trying to sell a shoe, we're trying to get you a good fit.
So you're trying to sell the right shoe for that runner.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, and I think we both like the gadget side of recovery here. So I use recovery tools to help address when there's an issue.
Oh, yeah.
And then I encourage my clients to get, and I feel like you as an athlete use them to help you maintain.
Yes, I mean, I love running because just to be free and out there and running, but the body can only take so much. And so that's when these guys come into play, so I can get back out there tomorrow and do another run.
That recovery strategy is something that I feel like is not talked enough in the running world, that you shouldn't wait till you have pain to address it, that working on soft tissue recovery and addressing mobility issues, that's where working with PT is super helpful too, because we can show you why you're getting the issue, but how to head it off from getting worse. Yeah. And I think if you can move better, you can perform better.
And one thing I learned is crazy, like you might have an issue in a certain area of your body, but it's completely the opposite point of entry that's causing that issue. So it's learning all these weird things and how everything's connected.
So
you definitely need someone like Denise that knows all those little intricacies about the body.
That's what we always say, we're like body detectives. We love like figuring out what's up. Okay, so let's just go through some of these. This is the newest trend, I would say, is the percussion therapy devices.
Yes. So it looks like, you know, something that we use to cut the shoe apart. But no, it's just a repetitive motion of beating out soft tissue.
And if you're wondering if a strategy is right for you, ask your local physical therapist or call our clinic and we can kind of help talk you through it. So there's different shapes of the attachments for different types of the body. There's different amounts of power. So depending on what area you're working, if you're working your quad versus your upper trap, you may use a different device or a different amount of power. So percussion therapy is a way to help improve circulation, address soft tissue restrictions, versus a handheld type device.
Yes. So definitely a little cheaper, easier to pack away, and doesn't require batteries, but also leverage. I find the longer the stick, the more deeper a little more leverage you can get on those calves and quads.
Okay, versus, and this is good for, and I would say even the roll go, which I love. I love the roll go because of the different shapes, and you can get this on, especially like if you're working through your upper back, when you can really get this on certain spots that are sore, or if you have certain trigger points, this is really good. So I feel like foam rolling, so we have a regular foam roller, which I think every runner should have. Foam rolling and these types of roller type things are good with fascial work. So just getting tissues moving versus trigger point work, which these would be for. So just getting it like in a specific spot instead of general care.
Well, so you could think muscles are all nice, intricate, streamlined tendons that are just nicely moving and flexing. If there's kind of knots and adhesions, you need to work those out so then it kind of, because it won't flex as well, you won't get that same articulation, you won't get that same movement in your gait cycle. So working those knots and the other
fascia
term you use,
good job, buddy,
out, then you get that better motion, which inherently gives you a better gait, a smoother transition, and less injuries down the line.
Yep. Spara, I'm really proud of this. Like, I got to meet the creator. He's a local guy to Northern Illinois.
Yeah.
He's a construction worker who, after wearing his construction boots all day, hard, restrictive boots, had some plantar fasciitis issues. So created with the materials he had at the site.
Marble from the construction site.
And then he had used a wooden board and like
Carved out.
I don't know what tool you'd use for that. What you carved like a hole? Like
A lathe, maybe, I don't know.
All right. So he carved it out because the problem with, he said a golf ball or a lacrosse ball is it kept slipping out from his foot.
Yeah.
And so on the construction site he was on, he had marble and realized that he could freeze it. So it would hold the temperature. So, because sometimes you like even rolling the water bottle doesn't work. So this was just like the perfect setup to be able to roll the bottom of your foot out.
Yeah. And it has a track where you can really pinpoint where that ball sits under your foot versus sliding around on the, if you're on hardwood or carpet, it just moves around too much.
So those of you with like heel pain, those plantar fasciitis when you first step out of bed in the morning, you're like, ow, 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 all the way to the bathroom. This is really good for that because it can kind of get in there and break up those restrictions that you might feel on the inside of that heel. And the other thing is that there are orthotics or foot support. Now, as a running technique specialist, I don't always love this because I sometimes feel like people will accommodate maybe a foot weakness issue with this, but maybe they're training and they have to get through this training period. I'm going to send them here to get something temporarily until we can fix the problem.
It's not. I sometimes refer to it as a crutch. In some ways, it's great for the circumstances, and sometimes we get elderly people that don't have that muscle mass to continue, and so they need that support frame. Or we get some clients that are really up in their miles because they have that goal race that they want to do, and so we have this item that they throw in the shoe for days on their longer runs or their weeks where their feet are just aching or their support needs are just really needed. And then they pull it out when they're strong again and they don't need as much.
It's like a brace.
Exactly.
And while I do think you guys have done a really good job of finding a brand that can accommodate people short-term or long-term. I mean, we have some poor nurses and doctors and firefighters and teachers who are on their feet literally standing all day and they just need a little extra support. And maybe these are not in their running shoe, but they're in their everyday shoe. So
they have to wear boots or they have to wear a certain shoe for work. That reinforces that support again in that shoe.
And again, why it's important to come into a store like the Running Depot to be fit, because I mean, at the display that I'm looking at right now, there's at least there's at least 6 versions of each, and you can see all the different heights. So buying a generic at a local drugstore or finding something online doesn't always work because you want to make sure you find the right fit for what you need for whatever you're looking for.
Yeah, because we have A, B, and C, and then sub A, B, C, that different support levels and different arch levels, and then metatarsal supports and things like that. So we definitely a little easier to scan the foot and take a look at the pressure points.
Figure out what they need.
Exactly.
Okay. So again, you're helping people find the equipment that they need specifically for them versus like a one-size-all approach.
And then also like the insoles sometimes fight with the shoe and don't always complement the shoe as well. So we always ask that they bring in the shoe that they're going to be using it for, because sometimes the combo might be too much for them of support ways, and they changes their gait again in the wrong way, or it could be they need a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think I always learn a lot just with talking with you about running shoes and how technology changes. Because I also have people that are like, well, I have like a 50 or 100 miles on this shoe, so I don't feel like it's ready, but maybe it's a shoe that's 2 years old. So you were saying something that they dry out?
Yeah, well, if sometimes we like to save a little bit of money and get that 2-year-old shoe on sale, but we have to be careful because the foam does dry out. The glue it's resin, it's plastics, it does decompose after a while. So that does change the shape, change the support needs, and it's not going to be the same shoe it used to be. So we just want to be careful with things like that. And then going back to the miles, we say sometimes 300 to 400 miles, but also we want to listen to the body. Sometimes that body will tell us before the shoe looks like it's going to be old.
Okay. And if you, like you said, if you change your gait up a little bit or you get stronger, that you might need a different level shoe to accommodate what you're doing.
Yeah. We work closely with high schoolers in the area for cross country and track, and we see, they might start this season with a type of shoe, and the next season be in a whole different type of category, just because they started out as a new runner and support needs changed.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And they went through puberty and they got stronger.
And,
so lots of
other things.
Lots of little things that play into it that are very important and why you should work with a shoe fitting expert. So thank you. I always learn a ton.
Yeah, thanks for coming in and showing all this fun stuff.
And I think one of the next ones I'd like to do is to talk about, and I'm looking at all this other stuff here, all this techie stuff.
Yeah.
I think it'd be really fun to talk about when technology is right for you. So maybe that could be our next video.
Oh, fun.
Okay. You don't have to cut anything apart though. All right, well, thanks so much. I'll put the Running Depot's contact information. They do virtual consults over the phone too, to help you figure out what shoe would be best for you, and they ship. So, and if you need help figuring out your running technique form and how to get ready for somebody like Wil to have him fit your shoe specially, we can definitely help with that at Smith Physical Therapy and Running Academy. So thank you.
You're welcome. And everyone here is phenomenal. We've all been working with feet for a long time now, so even if I'm not here, Pam, the owner, she's been here for 20 years, storefront, so she knows her shoes, she knows her feet. She's happy to help. And then a few other of us here that are just phenomenal with the fit process. So,
well, thank you again. Thank you for your support for the community and for all the information today.
Oh, you're welcome.